My name is Jean Franklin. I'm the Executive Director of Anchor of Hope. And the purpose of this Zoom conference is to educate the faith-based community regarding the Bureau of Justice Assistance Coronavirus Emergency Supplemental Funding. BJA, which stands for Bureau of Justice Assistance, solicitation makes clear that the CARES funding will support an expansive range of activities to be implemented by governmental and non-governmental, that's key, non-governmental entities, which includes community-based organizations, faith-based organizations, and churches, to fulfill Congress's mandated purposes. This particular CARES initiative had broad language. Congress put broad language in this, which includes the faith and the community-based organizations. So I want to thank as well well, I'll get to that later. But at a fundamental level, our criminal justice system relies not simply on governmental entities to reduce crime, violence, and victimization, but also on non-governmental, community-based, and nonprofit organizations. And that's why you all are on the line, because you are considered non-governmental and nonprofit organizations. And we provide essential services to justice-involved people, victims, and their communities. This essential work includes helping prevent violence through street outreach and intervention, deflecting and diverting people from jail and/or prison, providing substance abuse and mental health services to justice-involved people, and delivering critical assistance to victims. Without these kinds of essential services, California criminal justice system simply cannot do the work that its residents needed to do. California for Safety and Justice, which is an outstanding organization, nonprofit organization, actually alerted the community-based organizations the first part of June about the CARES Act. The California Safety and Justice put out some documents that the community-based organizations can begin to coordinate and begin to organize efforts to begin to advocate for these monies. And when I say these monies, California received $58 million through the CARES Act from the Bureau of Justice Assistance. This money went to CSBCC. But like governmental criminal justice entities, California faith-based organizations are non-governmental essential service providers. And whether they be advocates for victims of crime, individuals working to reduce violence in our communities, or groups working to ensure that particular vulnerable people leaving the justice system, which includes the homeless, don't recidivate, are in desperate and immediate need of resources that will help them and the people they serve to prevent, and this is key, this CARES money and how we organize around advocating for it, it has to be to prevent, prepare for, and respond to coronavirus. In the CARES Act, BJA's stimulus funds are the only funds that could be used to provide this critical assistance. So again, I just want to thank you all. And so this is the first stage, but we're going to share and break down this CARES Act. And keep in mind, going back in 2008, we had the stimulus money that came in when President Barack Obama was president. It had to do with putting a lot of infused money into the community, and there was billions of dollars. Anchor of Hope and United Job Creation Council organized around that effort as well. But from that, most of that money went to criminal justice and went to policing and so forth. The important part about this particular pot of money, we do not want the same thing to happen with the CARES money, that it goes back, goes into, you know, the sheriff's department, the police department, the prisons and so forth, and prison guards. We do not want that to happen. So this is why we're coming to today, to get information and how we can then organize. Very briefly, regarding Anchor of Hope. Anchor of Hope, our purpose is to encourage churches and faith leaders to establish not only prison ministries in your local churches, but also reentry ministries as well. And so it's very important that when our brothers and sisters come home from incarceration, one of the places that they go to is the church, because that's where their mothers and their grandparents are. They go back to the church. But Anchor of Hope is encouraging the churches to establish credible outreach ministries, homeless ministries, but also prison ministries and outreach ministries. So I want you all to go online to Anchor of Hope, our website at www.aohministry.org. Again, that's www.aohministry.org. Stay in contact with us. Go on to our Facebook page, Anchor of Hope Reentry Ministry. That's Anchor of Hope Reentry Ministry. Like the page. And then that way you can stay connected with Anchor of Hope, the work that we do. Amen. Okay, now I will give it over to Lisa Fitch. She will then share the agenda, and then she will then also introduce Assemblyman Sawyer and others that we have on the line. Lisa, turn on your mic. Lisa, I think you got to turn on your mic.
Done. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Hi, I'm Lisa Fitch. I'm with Anchor of Hope Ministries. I'm one of the executive board members and today's facilitator. Anchor of Hope wants to make sure our community is informed, just like Jean was saying. We have to send in our community responses to the BSCC by July 12th. And we'll go over that later. If you're not sure what to say to this organization, leave your contact information right over in the chat box. Okay, and we'll send you a sample statement. Please also use the chat box to ask your questions during the conference. And at the end of the presentation with Jason Franklin, we'll review the questions in the chat box. And for our presenters, we'll be answering those. Provide your email in chat box. That's very important so that we can send you the PowerPoint that we'll be going over of the presentation and other information that we provide you today. We want to thank all of our speakers and our supporters. We have several supporters that made this event happen, including Jan Perry, who's now with the Black Women for Biden, Jerome Horton, State Senator Steve Bradford, Vincent Holmes of the County of Los Angeles Chief Executive Office, and U.S. Congresswoman Karen Bass. She was very helpful. We have several presenters today, and our first is Mr. Ted Booker. I want to introduce you to Anchor of Hope board member, Ted Booker, and he's from the Ahmad Institute. Ted, are you there?
I am here, Lisa. Thank you so much. If we could have the presentation, the PowerPoint presentation put up, so we could share the screen. This is just a brief little something to let you know, to give you some idea of Anchor of Hope's history and the work that we have been doing over the past 20 some odd years. And a few years ago, we were doing a criminal justice courage campaign. And the whole idea of the criminal justice courage campaign was to build consensus through empowerment and advocacy. And so the question you want to ask is, why this, why now? If you look at what we were doing back then, this is just an extension of where we are now and the work that needs to be done. The overall goal when we got started was to, at the time when we did the conference, and preparing for that time, was to use the conference as a vehicle to build consensus among faith leaders that serve Black, brown, and Asian, and other marginalized groups, that we can, so that we can set a stage for engagement. The objective of the movement, which, and I'm gonna recognize it as a movement, is to build a power base through consensus with one united voice. The purpose was to unite churches and CBOs to establish a collective agenda. And in terms of points of discussion, in terms of how to be able to move forward, one of the best places to be able to do that is to find an intersection of barriers. And I think that is a great starting point in coming together. Some of the issues that we would want to discuss is to define issues that were about our commonalities and collective issues. And also looking at how we can accomplish an empowerment, empower a collective group people. How to develop a mechanism to find solutions to the problems that we're facing with today, and most of all to establish a collective agenda. And when you do all of that, that leads us to the idea of being able to establish a collective power structure. Next slide. An institutional power structure. And so the way that we're able to do that in terms of how to build empowerment through advocacy is three areas we're looking at is civic engagement, voting, and policy. That's how you move things. And one of the things that happens in local community, especially in marginalized group, is we tend to do a lot of work on a micro level. When you try to do something on a micro level, it's pretty much too late. Over the years, we've been discussing how to have representation at the macro, meso, and the micro level. The macro level is where decisions are really made. And if you don't attack an issue, the reason why we bring an issue forward like we are today is so we're attacking it first of all at the macro level. It's going to trickle down to that mid-level macro, meso level, where the work can begin to be organized and to move forward. But in terms of implementation, that's going to happen at the micro level. So we have to have representation at all three levels: macro, meso, and micro levels, in order to be able to build that empowerment and build that power base for our community. Next slide, please. Back then, we were looking at, in terms of partners, we were looking at how to build a relationship with the California Legislative Black Caucus and around the criminal justice campaign. And these were the issues we were dealing with back then. But just as we were dealing with issues back then, we could replace that now with the current issues of the day that we're dealing with. And the main emphasis is to really is to be able to galvanize our power and our strength as a collective body, to really be able to hold those accountable, bring them to the table to be in discussion about what we think our issues are, and how to to be able to find solutions to get us out of the problem. And one of the things that this is an ideal time for the church. You know, the church at any other point in history, now is the time for the church to be in place and to establish those relationships that we need to attend to some of the needs that's happening in the community level. Because we know, the church body knows, that on a regular basis during the course of the week, when individuals in the community cannot get services that they need through agencies and public agencies during the course of the week, they show up on church doorsteps on Sunday for those same services. And for that cause, we have to be able to empower the church to be able to deal with those individuals in need. And it's the one entity that can speak to the whole person. Next slide. Is that the next slide? I think that may be my last slide.
Yeah, yes.
It's the last slide. So, but basically, this kind of just give you a little idea of how we've been setting the stage for the work that we're about to do now. So a mechanism is in place. We just need to put it in action.
Amen. Thank you very much.
Lisa, can we hear from Assemblyman Sawyer? Just some brief words, if you don't mind.
That's my next introduction.
Oh,
I guess he doesn't really need much of an introduction. Please welcome California Assemblyman Reginald Jones Sawyer. Assemblyman Sawyer.
Is your mic on?
No, I think he might have had to leave because he just put a chat thing on that he had another Zoom conference to go to.
Okay.
But
Okay.
Chris Espinoza from the CLA is here.
Oh,
Okay, good.
you're early. That's fantastic. We'll go over that. But first, I'd like to introduce Mr. Dylan Liu, our senior field representative from Congresswoman Karen Bass's office. Mr. Liu there? Dylan?
So you can go on. We'll get to him later.
Okay. Well, let's first learn more about these stimulus funds. Our speaker this morning is Mr. Chris Espinoza. He's with the LA City Legislative Analyst Office. Mr. Espinoza.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And I'm very excited to be able to present to you today. I know it can be a little bit challenging on a Zoom call, but I'm very happy to participate. I did send in a PowerPoint presentation, and I hope you got a chance to see it. If not, of course, I'm very available to you all, and I can provide all the information I'm going to talk about today in a PowerPoint, and it has some very good information in there.
Okay, that's just been put up on the screen there. Are you able to? Are you able to see it on Zoom?
Well, I have it on my screen, so
Okay.
I'll follow along. So on the first page, that's my contact information down below. So I can, like I said, I can provide that to you. Okay,
Fantastic.
on to the next page. So there's been 4 pieces of legislation related to the COVID-19 pandemic. And the first one really just started in March, and it started to get us ready with lab capacity and infection control and a lot of communications, and that was $3 billion worth of funding. Then in March 18th, soon thereafter, Congress and we started seeing all these stay-at-home orders, and people started saying, oh boy, we're going to start seeing a lot of people out of work, especially in the tourism areas and the tourism industries, the hospitality industry. So the Families First Coronavirus Response Act put some money, $1 billion towards unemployment insurance and the processing, trying to speed up the processing of claims. The next one is the big one, and that's called the CARES Act, the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act. And that was signed soon thereafter, March 25th. So you can see how quickly Congress had to move to try to get these monies in place before, try to stave off the downturn in the economy. And so this is the big one with $2.3 trillion worth of funding. And it has a whole bunch of different sections, some of which we're going to go over today. And then the last piece of legislation was an enhancement. It was the Paycheck Protection Program and Healthcare Enhancement Act. And that recognized that we needed a lot of COVID-19 testing still, and that they had to fund the Small Business Administration because the Paycheck Protection Program was exhausted within 13 days of being released. So that's how popular that program was at the beginning. On the next page, it goes over federal relief programs, and this is just a partial list. And if you were interested in seeing, more city-related funds, I have a report that's very detailed on all the different funds that potentially might be used by the city. But to highlight some of them, I think many of you are familiar with the Paycheck Protection Program. My mom, she works for a church, Episcopalian church up there in South Pasadena. And I know the church got payroll protection program funds to help pay for their employees during the COVID stay-at-home orders, as well as if people got sick, to have some extra money on hand. And so these are small business and private nonprofit payroll loans. I heard that it's ending today, and I still think they have like a few $1 billion on the table. So let's see if they update that program. The next one also that's available to churches is the Economic Injury Disaster Loans. And this is a very important program because it provides private nonprofits with loans, but the key thing is 10,000 of it, the first 10,000 is forgivable. So it almost turns into a grant. And so that's a key one. I think many of you may have received a recovery rebate, and that's a direct payment from the federal government of $1,200 to eligible taxpayers. Two other big things that are coming through that are still being reviewed by the council is the Community Development Block Grant money. That's $31 million for the city of LA. And that will, there has to be a very tight COVID-19 response, but you're likely to see business assistance and increased public services with that money. And then there's a Community Services Block Grant, which generally goes to family source centers throughout the city of Los Angeles and enhances domestic violence. And I think many of you have read in the papers how domestic violence has become a challenging issue at the stay-at-home orders. The last one has to do with housing and homelessness on that page. And as you know, in the city of Los Angeles and throughout California, we've seen tremendous increases in homeless situation, very challenging. So there's about over $175 million in this initial allocation from the federal government to try to help with homeless issues. You know, a lot of people want to make sure that the spread of coronavirus does not occur for those living on the streets. There's also aging and disability service programs, housing for the elderly, additional rent subsidies. And then there's one that I thought would be particularly important for churches and faith-based groups. That's the Emergency Food and Shelter Program. And where sometimes out of churches, you know, they'll provide shelter or food or other kind of supported services. And I believe that that's a grant-related program. And I have more information at the end of the PowerPoint. On the next page, I just wanted to let you know about all the response activities that the city's done since the coronavirus occurred. You know, once we had these stay-at-home orders and the workplace was disrupted, we had to turn around really fast to try to provide essential services or enhanced services to the public. And so what's been going on is additional senior meals and enhanced senior meal programs, childcare for hospital workers because they're, you know, essential employees at the front lines, a small business microloan program run by the Economic Workforce and Development Department, and that's funded with $10 million. And then there's a rental relief program that I'm going to highlight. That's a $100 million program, federally funded. And then there's equipment and supplies like personal protective gear for city forces. A big one is medical relief at the LA Convention Center. And so essentially we're paying to make sure that that space stays open as a backup for hospitals who may be overcrowded with coronavirus cases, as we've seen in like Arizona and New York. Thankfully, it hasn't happened here, but in Los Angeles, but the convention center is serving as a backup just in case for additional medical relief. And then I'm sure you've heard about all the COVID-19 testing sites that there are, that they're free to the public, and that's extremely important. So that's a major service and very, very expensive to operate. There's additional homeless services, like they were helping to gather some of the oldest people who are out there on the streets and put them in city rec centers or putting them in motels and hotels. And there's even RV trailers for when people get sick, and if they're in a congregate type of facility, that they could be moved into these trailers. And then you've just seen like health and hygiene. So we're talking about just porta potties out in the streets to make sure that public health is addressed. And then other expenses like there's this regional procurement. So trying to make sure that hospitals have masks, that they have the protective gear that they need. As you know, everybody throughout the nation and throughout the world is all clamoring for this personal protective gear. And so the mayors created a program called Logistics Victory LA to leverage securing those things. On the next page, I'm just highlighting one very important program that's coming, and it's coming in July, this July, and it's going to be emergency renters relief. And it's really geared for people that make a family of four that make under $83,000. So it's eligible for people who have at least like a family of four and make less than $83,000, and it's going to provide up to $2,000 per household to help them pay for rent. And you got to show proof that you lost your job or you can't pay rent due to COVID. But what's interesting is that the payment doesn't go to the tenant, it goes to the landlord. So in a way, it could really help mom and pop landlords. And so we're really pushing that landlords to notify their tenants if there's an issue about not paying rent, that the tenants apply for it and really the landlord signs off. And so this program's coming in July, and it's very important. And we hope that if you do own rental property, that you're able to take advantage of it. Now you're going to apply online, or you can apply in person or over the phone. But once everybody applies, and we expect a ton of applications, they'll do a lottery system. So it's not first come, first serve. It's more of whoever applied, they'll run a lottery of those applicants after the application period is over. And that's how they're going to draw the names to see who gets the money. That will try to make it more fair. And on the very last page, what I did was I put together some web links, because I know that you can't cover all the information in an early morning Zoom call. And so I put some very, very good links to what you need to know about COVID-19, the emergency renters assistance program, small business microloan programs, arts relief funds. And then as I was talking about that emergency food and shelter program, that might be good for church applications, private nonprofits, that might be a good one. So I put a list, and but I'm very open to taking emails or phone calls, and try to be as helpful as possible to let you know what's going on here at the City of Los Angeles. So I thank you very much for your time, and if you have any questions, I'm available to you.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Chris. And as I mentioned at the beginning, if you have any questions for Chris, please put them in the chat box. And if you want a copy of that PowerPoint, please put your information, your email information in the chat box so we can get back to you. Now, I wanted to recall and see if Assemblyman Reginald Jones Sawyer was on, or Mr. Dylan Liu. Okay, well, our next speaker here is, again, from the Anchor of Hope, Mr. Jason Franklin. With us, Jason?
I am, thank you, Lisa. Let me see if I can share my screen. I have a quick PowerPoint. Okay. Is everyone able to see the PowerPoint?
Yeah, that looks good.
Okay. So this portion won't take long. It's a few slides, but for the sake of time, I'm going to keep it brief. Again, my name is Jason Franklin, and I am the president of Repurposed Vision Group. The purpose of Repurposed Vision Group is to be a bridge for transformative change for organizations that are looking to have a deeper impact and a deeper impact on the culture of the business. So that is what Repurposed Vision Group is about. The purpose of this part of the presentation is to go over the diversity, equity, and inclusion that is going forth with the city of Los Angeles. On June 19th, the mayor gave an executive directive that was given by the mayor to promote racial equality among the city's departments, and named Deputy Mayor Brenda Shockley as LA's first Chief Equality Officer. So in essence, the point of what was going on is that the mayor is allocating $250 million to the city of Los Angeles to help with diversity and issues that pertain to Black Americans. So the video kind of gives a better scope of what he's talking about. So I'm going to play the video real quick.
No sound.
Can you guys hear the sound?
No.
No.
Oh, okay, well, let me just talk about it real quick then. Basically what he's saying is that, again, $250 million is coming down from the city to deal with issues pertaining to Black Americans. Additionally, the mayor is calling for a legislation to be written in case Proposition 209 is repealed. And so what he's saying is that he wants to make sure that there's money that comes down to make sure that affirmative action is not lost. And so in essence, what we have to do now is kind of come together to figure out how we are going to deal with this issue. So how does this affect the church, and how does this affect nonprofits? We're going to have to examine our methods of change when it comes to this money that he's dealing with. We have to also deal with how diverse we are and how inclusive we are with programs that we are implementing. So for churches and nonprofits, we're going to have to really go into a deeper understanding of what diversity is and what inclusion is, because this money is basically for governments to implement diversity, equity, and inclusion in their programs. But the way that they're going to do that is that they're going to have to come to the churches, they're going to have to come to the local nonprofits to implement these trainings. We're also going to have to go into and deal with, are we willing to embrace change? Are we willing to deal with issues that we normally don't deal with in the churches and in the nonprofit sectors? Because this money is not solely, even though the base of it is to deal with issues pertaining to the African American communities, but it's also going to deal with a total inclusion of everyone. So when we go after this money that comes down, this $250 million, this money was taken from other sectors in the city. So it was taken from the police departments, it was taken from the sheriff's departments, specifically to deal with issues that we are facing. Also, we're also going to have to dismiss the understanding that change equals fear, but also to adapt the idea that change equals what's next. So when we're dealing with diversity and inclusion, that could be a complete wide range of people and ideas and thought processes that we as church leaders and nonprofit leaders are going to have to begin to adapt. But the best way to adapt that is to deal with transformative change. And when it comes to transformative change, that means that we have to be transformative leaders. And when we become transformative leaders, when we're doing this training, we are doing training dealing with conviction. We have to be convicted with what we believe. We have to deliver it with clarity and inclusion. Inclusion, more importantly, because again, we're dealing with we might be dealing with a range of people that we may not have contact with before. This transformative change is going to have to deal with being prepared for the future, but also staying current in the present. And so one of the ideas or an example of that I have come across recently is, for example, has anyone ever heard of the term non-binary or two-spirit? Well, the meaning of two-spirit refers to a person who identifies as having both masculine and a female spirit. It is used by some indigenous people to describe their sexual gender or spiritual identity. Non-binary gender identity is just one term used to describe individuals who may experience gender identity that is neither exclusively male or female. So when you're dealing with a non-binary participant, for let's say you have a reentry program in your church or in your nonprofit, and a person comes in and they identify themselves as non-binary. A non-binary person that does not identify with male or female wants to be referred to as they or them. So instead of saying he or she, you refer to them as them or they, because they don't identify. So as of 2020, there are 58 gender options now. So you can see how inclusion and diversity is truly diversity and inclusion. So when we have nonprofits and we have churches that are dealing with reentry, it could be a wide range of people that are walking through your doors that you may not have ever dealt with before. Now, the idea is not to change the mission or the vision of your church or organization. The mission is to just be educated on what may not be a normal interaction. And so with this money that's coming down, we have to be totally inclusive and be trained on dealing with all spectrums, not just one. And that is kind of the overall scope of what this money is dealing with. The diversity and equity training will include educating the leaders of the churches and of the nonprofits, because the leader is the voice, and the vision comes from the leader. So we have to educate our leaders. There has to be a form of inclusion council. So within your organizations, there should be a diversity and equity council that deals with these issues, so that if there is an issue that comes up, there is a council that deals with those issues. And if those issues can't get handled from the council, then it would go to the executive director or the higher leads of the church. And then number three, it's understanding the needs of the employees or the participants of your organization. So that basically means that we have to kind of know how to listen more and be more trained with what is going on within the pulse of your organization. What's included in the diversity, equity, and trainings is, what is diversity, equity, inclusion? What does that mean? It's dealing with African American myths. It's also dealing with unconscious bias. Now, unconscious bias is important because a lot of people may not even understand what an unconscious bias is, or the fact that they're even doing it. For example, I've seen organizations where I've gone in, and one of the examples was, or problems was, like if a person is going to lunch and they go to one of their Latino coworkers and they ask them, what is a good Mexican food restaurant to eat at? That's an unconscious bias, because you are assuming the fact that he's Latino, he understands where to buy or where to eat good Mexican food at. That's an unconscious bias, not knowing that he could have been adopted and from white parents and never ever experienced eating at a Mexican restaurant before. That's an unconscious bias that that will be dealt with in the training. The nature of discrimination will be dealt with. Breaking the stereotypes, identity, which goes back to the example of non-binary and two-spirit. Those are identities that we have to be trained on how to deal with all identities. And then keys to effectively implementing this training in the workforce. So that's basically it. For anyone that wants more information about diversity, equity, inclusion training from Repurposed Vision Group, we are working with Anchor of Hope. So the email is repurposedvisiongroup@gmail.com, and then you can also reach me on my phone. But the best method is through email. Again, repurposedvisiongroup.com. This was a short presentation, but there's so much more to it. But we have to get ready to be prepared to be able to accept this money from the city dealing with issues of diversity, equity, inclusion, because it is extremely important to be able to have that training and to be able to have the knowledge so that we can completely be a well-rounded organization. That's it for my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. That was good. I mean, it's amazing how much money is coming down through the government that we just didn't know about. And
Right.
Diversity, equity training, that's fascinating. And like you said, I think everyone could use a little bit of that nowadays, most definitely. Now I wanted to go back and talk to Ted Booker. You wanted to do some wrap up?
Yes. So to kind of sum all this up, one of the things that we'd like to be able to do is to actually put out a call to action, because there's some work that we have to do. And one of the there's several things that we could do as a collective, as individuals, and as individuals, as organizations, and as a collective. One is that everyone needs to make a written comment to the BSCC, make a public comment in terms of what they think should happen with the money. We also need to make a united statement along, which means that joining Anchor of Hope and with the idea of coming with a collective statement and being seen as a united front. That goes back to what I'm saying in terms of looking at, that's the best way to deal when you're dealing on a macro level. It's best to for those type of entities not to just see not only individuals, but see large groups of people that can present as a united front, which means that we've all had opportunity to really get together and have and engage in rich discussion about and find the intersection of our barriers, and to come up with a collective agenda and have one entity present those ideas, and we all stand in solidarity as a collective front. But one thing that definitely has to happen is those community responses. They're open. Once again, as I mentioned earlier, but it's open until July the 12th. If you need help with presenting a statement, or if you want to participate in the discussion around coming up with a collective agenda, or presenting as a united front, you can put your information into the chat box, and we will reach out to you in terms of moving forward. But the time is moving along quickly. We're already at the first of the month, so we basically have 12 days to really move forward and let BSCC know. And by the way, those of you that don't know who BSCC is, that's the Board of State and Community Corrections. What should happen with this money? Then that's the way to do it.
There we go. Yes, we'd like to present a united front. Now, I hope everyone's left their information there in the chat box so we can get in touch with you. And I think we're going to have a sign off now. If Jason would like to do our closing prayer.
I just want to make one statement, Lisa.
Okay.
Just for clarity. The CARES money, again, that $58 million that Congress had appropriated for the stimulus went to the Bureau of Justice Assistance. The Bureau of Justice Assistance had over $500 million, a lot of money, but they spread it out over the various states. for California, 58 million went to California to the BSCC. BSCC is still planning on what they're going to do with the money. They have not decided. So that $58 million, that includes non-governmental organizations, which is churches and faith-based organizations, community-based organizations. They are still in the planning stages. So now they're asking churches, community-based organizations to give your input on what they should do with the money. So there's a public comment that you can, and I will send that information out to those who are interested in moving forward on a united front, so that we can, one, submit individual comments by July 12th, and two, we will be meeting again to strategize in a united front on representing our churches and our faith-based organizations, mainly the churches, okay? So I want everybody to understand that that's the action. So this meeting today, this conference today was all about funding the faith base through the CARES Act with that $58 million. So we need to be proactive and not allow the SCC to do with that money what they normally would do with the money, okay? So we can't do it without everybody who's on this conference call to come, and we come in a united front. Now, there are some churches that are online. We got a whole bunch of churches that's, we got, of course, West Angeles is representing, Faithful Central is representing. We have the Baptist Ministers Conference that's representing, and we have SCLC with their collaborative, but we have various other churches as well. So that's the goal that we must do. Time is running. We only have, tomorrow is July. So we only have until July 12th. So responses has to go forward, which means that we have to do another meeting by next week, or by the end of the week, So those who want to be a part of Anchor of Hope and this Criminal Justice Courage campaign, that's what it is, Criminal Justice Courage campaign. To move forward, we have to organize and come together collectively.
Hello, hello. This is Assemblymember Reggie Jones Sawyer. I was promised that I would speak earlier.
Yes, I heard you were back on the line. How are you doing?
You're good. So I'll do this quickly. The Bureau of State and Community Corrections is under me. The monies that they distributed under my Youth Reinvestment Act, the first time they sent out the money, $35 million, they sent it directly to governmental agencies, which I did not want. I forced them to give the money directly to community organizations in my district and across the state. I will insist on the same type of distribution as we did before, but more important, we perfected even more so, because smaller entities, organizations still were left out, mainly because we're not still at writing RFPs, district on the last Youth Reinvestment Act fund got over $1.2 million. That's over $400,000 each year for the next 2 years. And they were #1 in the state. Let me say that again. They had the #1 proposal in the state from my district, South Los Angeles. And it's because they work with our office to help develop, to help get that RFP together. They got other resources in there. Many smaller ones would not even call my office. When we had opportunity to go out and give seminars on how to fill it out, very few people showed up. When people thought we were just going to give them a check, I had over 500 people show up. That's not how things work. That's not how things work in the state. That's not how I want it to work. But I think the other thing is I had a component that you would have to show accountability, and we would put extra money so that you would be able to do audits on what you've done. I think that's the other reason why we had fewer people show up. This thing of not being accountable will not happen with this money. It's just too much money for us to fail with it. It's got to get to community groups who are on the ground, who see people face to face. We should not be giving money to government. I'm not going to single out sheriff, police, probation, and all that. But I generally believe that if you give the money to government, cities, counties, they will take their 10%, 20%, and you get 80, 70, 60 cents on the dollar back in the community. It should be 90 cents on the dollar to go back to the community. So hopefully you do have that next meeting. I will be working hand in hand directly with the director of BSCC. The board members, some of whom I've helped get on that, are going to make a decision on who gets this money. And so it would behoove us to try to figure out, at least to have one conversation with our office, because we probably know better than anyone else, well, at least anyone else on this call, how the BSCC works and how it doesn't work. And we definitely need input on how to make it work for us in the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
So
you,
we can look
Assemblyman.
forward to a meeting on Friday.
Yes, we're going to schedule another meeting, a Zoom meeting, and it will probably be Friday because today is Tuesday. So we need time to really plan on the agenda. So it will be Friday.
Friday, no later than Monday.
Yeah,
No later than
is Monday
no
a
later
holiday
than
or
Monday.
Friday's a holiday? Because July the 4th is on Saturday. Which one?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Right.
The
Monday.
holiday.
So
Monday.
Monday?
Yes.
Okay,
Monday.
Monday. Look forward for Monday.
Yeah,
Jean?
Monday around, I'm thinking 11 o'clock. So Monday at 11
What is the purpose of the meeting, Jean?
is to
I'll let my
plan, to
staff know.
strategize around what Assemblyman Sawyer just shared. Okay, so we have to, some of our other faith-based organizations that, that need to be at the table, SCLC and the Baptist Ministers Conference, West Angeles, Faithful Central, need to be a part of this. And other churches that are part of this, on this conference, okay? So we will get everyone's names and then we will move forward expeditiously,
Okay.
okay?
I'll let my scheduler know now.
Okay.
Thank you.
I've provided my contact information. Will you be able to, you're going to send us a copy of the PowerPoints that were presented today and
Yes,
perhaps a list of participants?
yes. Yes, I'll do
Okay.
that. So
Perfect.
everybody submit I do have everyone's email address that did RSVP, but I would prefer for those who want to move forward, I don't want to send out a blast. And then as Assemblyman Sawyer mentioned, when you're giving out ready to write a check, you got 500 people. But when it's coming to the hard work and accountability, then those numbers dwindle significantly. So as we move forward on Monday, I would like for those who are interested to be on that meeting, conference Zoom meeting on Monday, to please email me. And you have my email address. Again, go on our website, www.aohministry, that's MINISTRY.org. And you will not, you will always have our contact information. And also check our Facebook page. That's Anchor of Hope Reentry Ministry. That's on Facebook, okay? And we're also on Twitter, Anchor of Hope 7. And we're also on Instagram, Anchor of Hope 07. Okay, so we will be in touch, but please submit an email to me directly at jfranklin@aohministry.org. So send me an email, J for my first initial G, J Franklin @aohministry, ministry.org. And I will respond immediately. Now, Jason is going to end us up, close us out in prayer. And I'll see everyone. And thank you so much to Assemblyman Sawyer, Karen Bassoffis, Jan Perry, Jerome Horton, Senator Bradford. Did I miss anyone? Thank you all for the support. And thank you all, mighty men and women of God who's doing the work on the ground level. Let's continue on it as a united front, okay?
Okay.
Jason, you want?
We have a couple of questions in the chat box, but I guess you
okay.
answer those
Are you
later.
the facilitator? Yeah, I apologize. Yeah.
No, Adrian's asking, is there an existing RFP now for the program? But I think you said there is no RFP right now. No.
And not unless Assemblyman Sawyer, because BSCC is under him, okay? So I don't believe there is, because BSCC stated that they were still in the planning stages of what to do with the money. So that's why we're coming together now. And
Yeah,
today was a fact-finding conference with information and education. That's what we needed to start with.
All right. I'm looking to see if there's any other questions that I can't really go up. I'm looking. Well, I know we have all the questions in the chat. We're going to make copies of the chat. We have everyone's personal contact information in the chat. So we will get back to you with some answers. And right now,
Lisa,
I think that is, oh, go ahead, Jason.
there was a question that I saw that stated that a person asked, they thought that the money from the mayor was the $250 million was for Black people. It is for Black people. That is the premises, the point of the funding. However, it will need to be a complete, well-rounded training that deals with all aspects, so that when you're dealing with the African American community, that comes with a lot of variety, a lot of things that is not just about being Black per se, but it means that you have to deal with the whole person. And so that is the point of the training, is to deal with the wholeness of the community and everything that comes in it. So his point is to have this money for the Black community, for nonprofits and churches to be able to implement this training, because that is the base of who is going to be implementing this training, or how this money is going to be handled. But we have to be well-rounded in our training and our understanding of the community, of the Black community. So that was the point of the PowerPoint. And that is the point of what the mayor is talking about, that it is for Black people. That was the point. But it has to be a well-rounded training, so that we are ready, so that when we are applying for this money, that we're not lost in the loop, because we're not fully trained on what it truly means to be diverse and what it truly means to be inclusive. So that was the point.
Gotcha. Okay, would you like to close us out today, Jason?
Oh yeah. Father God, thank you for this time. Thank you for the opportunity to come before you. We thank you for the many blessings that you've given us, God. We ask that you continue to watch over us in this time, God. Give us wisdom, give us understanding. God, protect us when we're in the stores, protect us when we are pumping gas, protect us when we are in our homes, God. Have your angels around us, God, and help us to have wisdom and understanding on how to deal with the issues within our city and within our people. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Amen. God bless everybody. See you on Monday.